Hey, what's up, everyone? Morey Croson here from the Performance Lab of California, and we have another new breakdown for you today. And it is on John Ross, something that we've done in the past, but really just going into the three different phases of sprinting and really being able to optimize your ability to go it from that start phase, right, and then into that transition phase, and then the top end speed phase. And the reason I say this is because we see a lot of guys that struggle primarily in this transition phase and being able to get through that. And this is a great example of somebody who does a great job in the start phase as well as the transition phase. And if you could do really well in both of these, similar to a lot of different movements, if you can start off really well, then that really makes a big difference on how you end up finishing. And so we can see how John Ross does a really good job here in the start phase. So we'll go and we'll start off with the actual extension here. And you can see that really the overall position of his body is very, very low. He's keeping his hips down, and he's also being able to get a lot of overall extension. But what's really important is how well he's able to stay onto his toe there, right? How high his heel is able to maintain on that first step, and then from there, he's able to very easily transition onto that leg and then push off that leg, and then does a good job being able to, on that second step, keep that heel slightly off the ground as well during that landing phase. So now what ends up happening is he actually really shortens down his start phase. There are some guys that I'll see, go more into 2 to 3 steps where they're really starting to get momentum there, where he, I would say, is closer to like 1 to 2 steps. He basically goes right into his transition phase basically immediately, right? Because he just goes here, boom, boom, and now he's really into his transition phase. And the reason I say that is because of how he's able to maintain his spine position through this transition phase. So now this is where you really have to be able to dig and maintain a fairly consistent turnover speed, right? And so what happens is that your first step here is boom, you land. We'll say this one's at 57, 59. Here I could just double tap. And then he pushes off at probably about 0.14 is the overall time, 0.14, 0.15. And again, about 0.14 on the left side here. Lands at 0.2. Pushes off at 0.13. Okay, so point being is once you get into that transition phase, it's really that time period where you're going from landing, spending a lot of time on the ground, right, into being able to start to lower that contact time, right? And that's why I say that John Ross basically gets right into his transition phase because of how low his contact time on the ground is from the very beginning of the run. So he really is not in a very long overall start time, because a lot of times what we see in that start to the transition is people are starting off with like a 0.18, even 0.2 contact time, and then as they go through the transition time, they'll get down to 0.14, blah blah blah, and then when they're at their top end speed, now they're at 0.1, 0.12, things like that. That's usually how we see the curve. But we could see here with John Ross, what he does a great job of is from the very, very beginning being able to maximize that contact time. And how he does that is being able to keep that heel really high off the ground, and by being able to do a good job of keeping his feet out in front of him during the landing phase, and then also transition his hips in front really quickly. So as he lands with his feet in a good position here, boom, right, with his feet really not too far out in front of him. You don't want to end up being, where your hips are way behind your feet. You want to make it so your hips are pretty well underneath, okay? And then as you go, then that makes it so then you could transition your weight onto that foot a little bit more effectively and then push off sooner. Okay, so now he's going right through his transition phase, and really, again, what's most important during that transition phase is being able to slowly get those hips coming more and more forward, and being able to get your spine more and more up to neutral. So you can see how he's slowly starting to raise up his spine, and now he's getting into a position where the overall amount of time that he's spending on the ground, and he's getting more and more upright, but the amount of time that he's spending on the ground is a lot better. So this one's here. 1.8 is when he touches the ground. 1.83. And he's already off the ground at 193. So he's probably at like a 0.09 contact time, right? Here, 203. So when he lands, you can see how he's landing with his feet are almost behind him when he's landing. And then he's able to push off. Again, about 0.09. He's already off here, so he's pushing off by 212. Okay, and the reason that he's able to, or the reason that he has such a good contact time is, again, look where he's at here, right? He hasn't touched the ground yet. He's just about to touch the ground, and then when he touches the ground, and when he does, his feet are, or sorry, yeah, his foot is underneath, or really behind his head, right? We just say to make it so everything's right underneath you. There's a lot of guys that we see that go in and send their videos in, and their feet are out in front of them, right? They're overstriding, they're landing in this position. But he's doing such a good job of pulling that leg, and this is such a crucial thing that we see that's a mistake, is that guys don't pull their leg very well underneath them, and he does such a natural job being able to do that, that he's able to maintain a fairly forward position in his spine. You know, it's when you have your spine out in front of you like that, that puts a lot more pressure on your hamstrings and your posterior chain to be able to maintain that level of speed and that level of power, and be able to land with your foot underneath you. So he's able to, generate a lot of force there, when he's running. And you could also see that when he lands, and I know this camera is not great, but you can see how he starts turning those feet out. So that's putting a lot, even more pressure on the hamstrings. So, he's got to do a lot of extra work in the pelvis and within the hamstrings in order to be able to maintain his overall health, just because he's going to be using so much of his upper hamstrings, which is such an advantage on the other side of that as well. Because, for a lot of us, and me included, getting into utilizing those upper hamstrings correctly is our biggest deficiency. It's something that we struggle with, where he was blessed with having such a gifted ability to use his upper hamstrings so well. But he has the other side of it, where he has to do a lot of recovery work, because those muscles are the muscles that will typically start to have some type of injury, especially if you're, eccentrically or lengthening the muscles and then concentrically contracting the muscles very, very quickly and over a long period of time. Those muscles will end up getting fatigued and are at a little bit higher risk. So just to give you a little bit more information about, the 40, I know we're going into the off season for football. We work with a lot of different football athletes, a lot of different football teams. So I wanted to be able to give this to you for your own good, to help you in being able to understand how to run the 40 a little bit faster, and also break down the 3 different phases of sprinting for you. So if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll talk to you soon.